This is a Hot Pie Original.
Well, we could and we will break this out into a few sections just because he's that interesting and this guy is the stuff of movies. Wait, he's already had a movie. He's had a documentary about him. I can break it out into two phases. So Richard Garriott is his name. I mean, you talk about fascinating life in every way. 1 month in Richard Garriott's life is like an entire lifetime for most people in terms of adventure. Fascinating guy. Richard Garriott is a legendary game developer. That by itself is a whole discussion that I'll play back for you sometime soon. You know, here's a guy that started developing games when he was in high school outside of Houston, started selling them in baggies and became rich in high school. Goes on to the University of Texas, and he created what we now know is the first-person gaming sensation of today. But that's a separate part of what we're talking about today. So for every discussion about what a legendary game developer he is, he's even more legendary in the world of exploring. It's a checklist, a bucket list that's beyond comprehension. He's been to both poles. He's been to space, and he's now just returned from 36,000 feet down. He just returned from the Mariana Trench, which is, I guess, the deepest part of the ocean. He goes down in, and I can't even do this justice, down in a little pod, all the way to the bottom and then back up. And it's that by itself is an amazing discussion. But I thought, since we had a long discussion about gaming, about exploring, about the ethics of gaming, about the influence of gaming, and then we talked about exploring, I thought, wait a minute, let's pull out this discussion about space, because rich guys are going to space. It's a battle for rich guys going to space, and he's the first rich guy that went to space. He paid his way. For those that don't know the career of Richard Garriott, several years ago, he paid his own way, to go to space with some Russian astronauts. And there was a documentary made about it. So let's back up and just focus on rich guys going to space, because that was the part of this discussion. So I asked him first. And I thought, well, maybe he's going to be offended by this. He's a rich guy and he's the first rich guy to go to space. But we now have Elon Musk, we now have Jeff Bezos, all talking about going to space. So I asked him about the future of and the effect of space being the frontier right now for only rich guys.
The problem we've had for access to space is that, while 50 years ago when this began, there was nobody other than a government that could amass the amount of wealth and the amount of talent that had to be pooled to do something as unbelievable as getting off this planet and reaching the moon. However, it's extremely expensive to do that the way they did it. And it's also been very dangerous. And when things are very expensive and very dangerous, you don't do it very often. And so it's understandable that under those conditions, access to space would be rare. But if you think about other forms of transportation we have in our lives, whether that's cars, planes, boats, or trains, all four of those mature forms of transportation, when you run out of gas, you fill up the gas tank and you go some more. With rockets, we've been stuck in this mindset of on the maiden voyage, you burn all the fuel in the tank and then you destroy the booster. You let it drop onto the ground and it's literally destroyed and you go build another one. Well, when you destroy the maiden voyage vehicle, you're not learning much about how close to the edge of survivability it was. You're not learning much about reusability. You're definitely not reusing it. And so again, it remains very dangerous and very expensive. And it's taken people such as Jeff and Elon who were inspired by the Apollo era. And I would argue that almost all the captains of industry of the great tech revolution of the United States, a lot of us grew up in the Apollo era and we believed in the 2001 vision of the future that never happened. And so as they've now made their fortunes, they're turning back to what made them passionate in the first place and saying, we are going to manifest that future that we all believed in, and we're going to race each other to make it happen. And it is becoming much cheaper and much safer. And that is good for everybody. Because if you think about, if you wanted to do some work in space or take a vacation in space, It'd be way too expensive for almost anyone. But these new technologies have already dropped the price by about tenfold. Elon believes that even with the vehicles he's got to get it down another tenfold. And with Starship coming on, it'll be 1,000 times cheaper than it was just 10 years ago. And so that means it's going to make it available for all of us. So it's expensive today, but it is rapidly becoming cheap enough for everybody else.
So Father's Day is coming up. You're doing the gift boxes.
Yep.
So here's something that's certainly not a tie or a sweater or a pair of socks. Not a bad idea.
Well, I think it's great if you don't know what to get your dad. I mean, get him some hot sauce. That way he can prove how much of a man he is, right? And this hot sauce will go great, and your dad will love it. So I think it makes a great gift box. You can go to our website and find those there. It comes in packs of 4. It's a great box you just give to your dad and say, listen, here, Dad, thanks for being my dad. And it's not that sock that's just going to go in a drawer. It's not that gift card that's going to go in a wallet, never be used again. It's actually something he can share with his friends. And so I think it's a great idea.
All right, order a box now. It's atxhotsauce.com, atxhotsauce.com. I know what you're thinking. Okay, man, how much? I had to ask him. I asked him how much he paid. And I asked him how much the going rate is right now. And then he makes a very compelling argument that the more accessible space becomes, the more the price is going to go down. It's going to take the initial rich guys to make it happen. But he threw around some pretty big numbers.
And so it is a rich man's game right now. You today could go buy a ticket from SpaceX. They would happily sell you one. It's about $50 million, plus or minus $10 million. So it's not a cheap ticket. But the point is, there's enough people willing to part with that money.
Yeah,
that will get enough reflights. We actually, as of right now, the Dragon just launched what's called Crew 2, NASA Crew 2 to the ISS. The very next Dragon is launching a private flight called Inspiration 4. And starting with today, the majority of future flights to book around the globe, whether it's in Russia or in America combined, the majority of future flights are private. And I was talking with Elon the other day, and he actually said he expects that to remain true indefinitely. That we are now permanently, I flew during when there were just 7 of us over 20 years compared to maybe 100 of the government astronauts in that same period. And we're now in a time where from this day forward, there are more people who will fly privately than will fly as government astronauts.
50 million is the price tag. It's going to go down, though. Of course, I went there. I did. I couldn't help it. I'm not a UFO person. I don't really care. But I thought, here's a guy who's been to space. He knows more about it than anyone. He's connected beyond belief. I had Baker Mayfield saw spaceships over Lake Travis not all that long ago. So, then he doubled down on it, which I still have yet to figure out why 600 people at the Oasis did not see the same spaceship that the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns saw that particular day. But it's in the news. It's talked about all the time. And there's plenty of people that believe it. I don't even care enough to believe it or not believe it. But I had to ask him about UFOs.
Oh, well, so if you're asking in general, do I believe that there is life in this universe beyond the planet Earth? I think unquestionably the answer has to be yes.
Okay.
I think that, I've been studying, early life down in microbes and extremophiles myself on my expeditions enough to have a reasonably good understanding of the science. And I think it's extremely compelling that, first of all, we do see organic molecules throughout, the universe, even beyond our solar system. We already can detect organic molecules, the building blocks of life. And the chemistry to go from those building blocks to something you would actually call living, there's nothing magical or special about that. It's just a proper physical arrangement. And so I would predict there's life actually commonly through the universe. The trick is, what does it take to have life become intelligent and spacefaring, or at least to the technological level to have your radio broadcast to reach across the vast distances of space? That becomes harder. In fact, the best math I've seen on that subject says that while it's quite reasonable that we would expect to find life within, if not in our solar system, at least within a few hundred light years of Earth, to find something that would have, advanced life, animals, and technology, statistically, it's very likely that even if that does exist, it's really, really far away. so far away that even in the history that we've had in the universe of planets with air, they couldn't have possibly reached us. So I believe that life exists off the Earth, or probabilistically should exist bountifully outside the Earth. But also, advanced life is unfortunately not anywhere near the Earth. And don't forget, to have life, the universe is 13.7 billion years old, but first generation stars didn't have rocky planets around them. They were just at the beginning of fusing hydrogen into the heavier elements. So it takes a second or third generation star like ours to have a planet that could host life. And so it's probably only been a few billion years of the universe's history where any life could possibly have reached our level of advancement. And so if you look at that, do I think that it is even possible that aliens have visited the Earth, advanced aliens have visited the Earth, not microbes on a meteorite? I would say the answer is no. And by the way, I'm just as captivated as anybody else when you see a unidentified flying object to go, what is it? And it's a mystery, and it's cool to go discover it. But I've seen no evidence to make me even have a debate in my mind as to whether there's aliens. And that reinforces the scientific calculation that it seems unlikely any could have reached us.